What's up, banana bunch? Bunch?
Welcome to the Jungle Gyms podcast. What's up, Banana Bunch? You know what time it is. It's time for another episode of the Jungle Gyms podcast. Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Mark. Hey, look at this setup on the table here. Look, we're in the second week, and I probably won't talk about how many weeks in the future. This is the second week of our giveaways. We announced our winner online, although I think I've already decided I'm changing something. I'm going to announce the winner on the show each week. I think that's a way better way. That way you can hear your name in lights or your screen name in lights, and it gives everybody plenty of time to enter and all that good stuff. So we'll cut off entries probably like the night before. It'll be fine. But I'm really excited about that. Thank you all for playing last week. I am very excited to give away the winner. I reached out to you on YouTube. I'm going to reach out to you in the YouTube comments. So always hit me up there first, just so I can confirm your identity. That'll be very easy. So anyway, this week, we had Eckrich Meats on the show last week. It was great. And then they were so happy with it that they sent me a bunch of stuff to give away. So the first of what hopefully will be many giveaways with them. This week, we've got this giant Coleman cooler. They did 2 Yeti Rambler tumblers, like the good Yeti, right? Not like the Arctic knockoffs. They're fancy pants. There's a cutting board in here. And then I decided, I put some chips in here, but what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to fill this with some of my favorite international snacks here so that you've got something to eat out of this too in the meantime, So that's going to be great. And look, here's the rules. I'll just get this out of the way off the top. You have to be a subscriber of the Jungle Gyms podcast on YouTube. I'll put all the links everywhere on this. You might see this on another platform too, but I'll put links so it makes it really easy for you. You just follow Jungle Gyms International Market on YouTube. So you have to be a subscriber. And then every week I'm going to have you leave a comment on that week's episode. So on this episode, for example, we are doing a breast cancer special all about preventative medicine and preventative care with regards to getting checked up, monitoring, all the just good healthcare tips. So what I want you this week to do, again, you're going to subscribe, you're going to comment on this video, and I want the comment to be something that you learned from Drs. Lichter and Ryleman today. I don't think that's crazy. I think that's actually a good way. I almost put a password in the middle of the episode at random, but I figured since this was really serious subject matter, it didn't feel right interrupting in the middle of it. But eventually, look, the thing is, I want to give you cool stuff, but I want you to enjoy the show forcibly. So this will be an easy way in the future. We'll change it up. And I will, at some point, every episode, I'm going to give you the rules. And I'm sure at some point we'll iron out all the details. But because things move really fast around here, I just want to make sure that I'm hooking you all up in the meantime. So again, subscribe to Jungle Gyms on YouTube. Leave me a comment. Tell me something cool that you've learned in this episode. And those are the big ones. Oh, also, it's local pickup only. I am not shipping anything. Please stop asking. Eventually, I have a lot of patience. I'm very nice. But one day, I will not be as nice as you want me to be. So I'm just saying it right now. We're not shipping. It's in-store pickup only. That's how this works. If that's a problem, you don't have to enter. But I will always want to take care of that. I've got some other things kind of unrelated. And this is one you can actually just reach out to me. podcast@junglegyms.com. This is a first come, first serve situation. And really only reach out to me if you want to actually be there. But I'm going to give away some tickets. I'm doing an event here with Netflix. Perhaps you've heard of them. But they are releasing a new film written and directed by one of my all-time favorite comedians. Honestly, I think probably one of the best, if not the best working comedian on the road right now, Bill Burr. Fellow podcaster, Bill. I promise I won't do my impression right now. But, he's got grocery store jokes. He talks about self-checkout, something that we don't use at Jungle Gyms. So, Bill, love you. But I've got a lot of tickets to give away to that. So coming up, that'll be on October 17th. I'll have more details next week. But if you're like, oh my gosh, I love Bill Burr too, Mark. I'd love to go see his movie in the theater with you. Great. October 17th, you can join me, and we're going to do it at Newport on the Levee. And all you have to do is email me, podcast@Jungle Gyms, and I will give you a pair of tickets while supplies last. How's that sound? Great? Awesome. I'm looking forward to it. It should be fun. So, all right, I've got all that out of the way. Don't forget to get your tickets for the International Wine Festival. It's coming up in a couple weeks, November 11th. That's going to be a banger. We've also got the film screening from Zamir Gada coming up on October 21st. It is the Ohio premiere of his film that he made with Stephen Powell. I should have Stephen on the show at some point, too, to talk about making the movie. It'll be great. And with all that out of the way, I'd like to bring back, a few months back, I had some of the doctors from Kettering Health here, Fort Hamilton Hospital, come onto the show. And we were just sort of, they were doing a healthcare event here around the Da Vinci surgical robot. And look, realistically, I looked at that. I was like, yeah, I don't really know what we're going to talk about, but I definitely want to play with a robot. I will figure the questions out in the future. And so, obviously that episode did well for us. Everyone was really happy. And we've been talking the last few months and we're just sort of like, hey, let's do some more fun stuff together. But, for me, I look at the show. It is funny and silly and I like to do that stuff. I love introducing brands, but I look at this. We do have a platform and this is kind of a good thing. And with October being Breast Cancer Awareness Month, this just made too much sense. And I was like, let's get some experts in here to give us some tips. I'm like, well, look, a lot of you sourced questions for me. You were reaching out to me like, here are the questions I want to ask. So I asked all of your questions. They all made it into the edit. But I wanted to ask all these questions. I wanted to talk about preventative health care and things that you could do to check yourself, right? Obviously it predominantly affects women, but it does affect a small percentage of men too. So this is good information for all of us. You probably love someone in your life. You want to take care of them. I'm trying to be serious about this because it is something serious. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you learned something from this. And of course, I want to just give a quick shout out right now. Huge thanks to Kevin and everybody at the Kettering Health organization. You all have been really good to me. I'm looking forward to more collaborations like this in the future. And thank you for taking the time to come out here. This is really more direct to Drs. Lichter and Dr. Lichter and Dr. Ryleman. How do you pluralize it? Is it doctors and then you just say their last names? I've been struggling with that in the show notes all week. But no, seriously, Lichter, Ryleman, thank you both for coming out here and educating us and taking the time to do that. It's very, very cool of you. I think this is a really unique opportunity. And I hope you all enjoy this episode. So without any further ado, let's meet the doctors.
Fort Hamilton's back. We're back at Jungle Gym.
Almost like you've been on the show before.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that is a good time to do this. Welcome back to the show, Dr. Lichter.
Thank you.
If you'd like to introduce yourself officially.
Sure, yeah. So I'm Andrew Lichter. I'm one of the general surgeons at Hamilton Hospital, Kettering.
Awesome. And Dr. Ryleman, welcome to the show. First time.
First time, Linda Ryleman. I am the medical director of the Women's Health Center over at Fort Hamilton, and I'm a radiologist, diagnostic radiologist.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
That's great.
I thought this was fun. Well, fun maybe is the wrong term to use. But, like last time, it's edutainment, right? It's like, let's walk through this. And obviously, with it being October, Breast Cancer Awareness Month, I thought this made a lot of sense to have you all back on the show. So
thank you.
Let's start from the top.
Appreciate it.
Oh my gosh, yeah, my pleasure. Seriously, everyone loved you all on last time. I mean, it just makes a lot of sense. And to me, this is one of those fun partnerships where, look, we were talking off camera about how the last episode actually made a difference in someone's life legitimately. I'm sure maybe more than that one, but that was the one I got an email about, and I was like, oh, it works. The show's going well. You know what I mean?
Well done.
No, but to you and your team, seriously, well done to all of you. It's really great what you all are doing up there. So
appreciate it.
Let's start from the talk. The talk. I had TikTok on the brain still today. But starting from the top, look, first and foremost, the message here, what are we here for? What's the starting point?
Basically, it's to make people more aware of breast cancer, the issues, tell them to get in here and get screened and get involved in themselves and their care and come in and get mammograms. That's how you start. See your doctor and get your mammograms and get started taking care of yourself.
Early detection seems like I would assume probably most.
It makes a big
cancer,
difference.
Right? Yeah.
We were just talking about that. A patient, like you said, we have people that come in a little bit later than earlier, but what we see on mammograms, there's literally millimeters. I mean, we're picking up 3-4 millimeter cancers, and to put that in perspective, it's 1/8 of an inch.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
and
when
that's
you find them that,
right?
and when you find them that early, you live through it, and it's a bump in the road, and you continue on with your life like you should.
Yeah.
And that's how we want to find them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think October is about breast cancer awareness. 12% of women are going to get breast cancer. And
One in eight.
That's a staggering statistic. And, the earlier we detect it, we say, you can find it when it's small. But most importantly, the smaller it is, the less likely that it's actually spread somewhere. So we can do a smaller procedure to remove it without distorting the architecture of the breast. Mm-hmm. And as you mentioned,
it hasn't spread anywhere.
A bump in the road. I mean, truthfully, you come in, you get surgery,
I've actually
you're cured.
told women before when they get really, really scared, they get told they have breast cancer. But when I see them and they're really small and I know that they're going to be taken care of by Dr. Lichter and then people after him, you know that the survival rate is so high. It's in the upper 90s,
wow.
when you find it that small. It hasn't gone anywhere. You're making a difference, and it is truly a bump in their road, in their path. So that's when you want to find it. That's why we want you guys to come in. You can't be afraid to do that. It's a little bit nerve-wracking maybe, but you just got to come do it. And at Fort Hamilton, I was going to talk a little bit about what we all have there.
Please, yeah.
Everybody always asks, so there's a couple things. The radiology group that I belong to is the same radiology group that covers major breast centers in downtown Cincinnati.
Okay.
We do 2 different networks in Cincinnati in addition to the Kettering network here. So the level of expertise that you have and the physicians taking care of you is really high.
Totally agree.
So that's something that a lot of people don't know. I think they picture, little community hospital, you know, what kind of doctors do you really have working there?
Sure.
We come from, great places. And then Dr. Lichter, he's there all the time pretty much, aren't you?
Yeah, so there's 3 of us surgeons there at Fort Hamilton who we do the length and width of general surgery, but specifically I have a specific dedication to breast as well. I'm our surgical director. So it's about probably 30% of my practice is breast as well, breast specific. And so, and then beyond us, we also have the Kettering network as a whole, where we're a part of our breast cancer. We actually go to the same breast tumor board meetings, all the surgical oncologists, all of the breast surgeons.
Radiation oncologists.
Everybody's coming to the same meetings, and we're
meets
reviewing cases. And so tapping in, you may be, there is this notion of like, oh, Kettering Hamilton is kind of a smaller hospital, but what you're really getting is excellent radiologists who are the same radiologists as, frankly, downtown Cincinnati. And care by surgeons who participate in the Kettering network, and your cases are being reviewed up at main campus of Dayton, where there's potentially 50 people on the tumor board meetings where we're presenting your cases, and so you're getting academic level care close to home.
Yeah, and speaking of close to home, I mean, as I understand it, well, I'm pretty positive I know for you, but I understand you're also a hometown hero, right?
I am. I live and work in Hamilton, Ohio.
Is that going okay though? Like sometimes I try to escape the town, but
I love Hamilton, and because I've been here and I live here and I work here. I like to think that I bring a little bit of perspective. I've been in medicine a lot longer than my cohort over here, but I like to bring everything I can to the care of the patients. That we take care of here. But I've worked really hard with the department and the network has been really great about helping us achieve a lot of things. We're at a ACR, Center of Excellence, in the imaging side. So that means everything from the mammograms to the ultrasound to the stereotactic to the MRIs that we do there are all dedicated, and they've all been reviewed and approved, and we have to send them in for all kinds of...
Yeah, the ACR is actually the American College of Radiology.
Total.
Okay, cool.
Becoming a center of excellence isn't just mean that you're an approved center, but you actually have shown excellence after case review.
And we have that in the breast arena. So we are considered an ACR center of excellence in breast. So that's amazing.
Yeah, congratulations.
It's pretty awesome.
A testament to what you've built.
Yeah. And Linda has built it, literally. Our physical building for the breast center, Linda was a part of building it. So.
Well, years ago, for those of us who've been around Hamilton a long time, the hospital has really evolved. We've done a lot with it. So that whole new north building that has the ICU and the women's center in under it was an addition, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago or so. And so we designed it in a way that was comfortable for women. You come in off the lobby and go right into the center, and it's a women's kind of separate little area. You're not walking through the hospital or sitting in hallways. You're taken care of.
And I think that is hard because when we say women get your mammograms, as a male saying that, it's like, well, you don't understand. That's kind of private. Well, when you come to Hamilton, we're not asking you to step into a truck, which mammograms in a truck are important.
They're fine.
They find cancers every year. But you come in, you are in a separate area. We have a separate place for you to get changed. We have specialty gowns. Yeah. The women there are excellent about shepherding you through the process. The entire thing. A patient told me the other day, she said it was the most comfortable mammogram, if that's possible, the most comfortable mammogram she's ever had. And there are some mammograms that are uncomfortable, but I think our team is excellent about helping you navigate that process.
Yeah, they work really hard.
And you're not walking halfway into the heart of a hospital after parking on floor 9 of the parking lot. I mean, we've said this before. Yeah. We are the Bob Evans. If we were a restaurant, we'd be Bob Evans. We aren't cooking 5-star gourmet food, but we cook hearty food. It's warm.
Well, neither is Bob Evans, if we're being honest.
But
I'm sorry,
but that's my point. Is just
that's
like
so funny.
We're solid, homegrown, hometown hospital. Just serving hearty food to our people.
I love it. Yeah. Mammograms, hernia surgery, and excellent sausage gravy. The three things I come to Kettering Health for.
Yeah. Except it has to be turkey sausage.
It's turkey gravy.
It's turkey gravy? Okay, that's fine. No, listen.
Well, but it's still excellent.
It's still excellent.
I'm into it. And listen, and I'm good with that. It's going to keep me a little healthier at longer time.
Yes, it'll keep us all healthier.
Yeah.
But, yeah. And in terms of the equipment, too, 3D mammography, the AI. Everybody asks about AI or what we call CAD, which is computer-assisted detection. We have that on every mammogram done.
Wow.
We do 3D on everybody, so all the screenings that come in.
Yeah, so when you say 3D, like, I mean, I obviously know what that means, but like, is this just like a new scanning technology across the board?
It is. So what, to kind of simplify, maybe to make it understood, is the old
Explain
way.
it like
the old way was 2D.
Yeah.
We took a top to bottom and a side to side picture.
Right.
And you just take the picture and you see what you see. Okay.
Right.
3D is kind of like taking that material or that body part and it's like slicing it up into thousands of little pictures and then of which you literally page through each one. So if you can imagine, if you have a lot of tissue in the middle, something small, you have a lot of tissue in there, it can get buried in there. And if I was just looking at a picture that looks like this, I might or might not see it. An experienced eye is better than a non-experienced eye.
Of course.
And I probably pick up, the majority of those. But what 3D does is it takes all this tissue and separates it out. So I look at it as I go down through it. And we do it in 2 planes on each breast. And so sometimes you look, it has been amazing. Dense breast is really, really helpful with that. And just complicated breasts. But we have several cases where I literally going through those images, like paging through that image somewhere in the middle, I go, whoa. And there's a little tiny thing in the middle that you look back and it's like, there's no way you see it.
Yeah, so last Thursday I had 3 from Linda. One was 4, one was 6, one was 7 millimeters. I mean, they're catching super small.
Yeah.
And
6 millimeters is
at the first view, we're just like,
put it in perspective.
we're looking at
We're
these
talking about,
and just doing an exceptional job at really capturing them
It's
early
been incredible.
stage.
And then on top of that, we have a computer-assisted detection program that actually a computer reads it too.
Wow.
So when I look at these, I look at them not just for myself, but then I can hit a button and then a computer will go ding and put a circle around something and say, look back at this and do a double check. And it makes me look twice. Some things you say, no, it's nothing. Other things you say, wow, okay, maybe I should look at that twice. So it's actually the computer is assisting us to detect even more.
Yeah, that's
pretty awesome. And we do that on everybody.
I feel like that's got to be huge. But like you said, an experienced eye is better than not. But like having an extra set, like a backup set, right? You're like, just in case, is this an anomaly?
Yeah.
As long as they don't replace me, I'm okay.
Well, and that's where too. I don't think they'll ever replace.
They're mostly just focusing on replacing artists right now. So, but I've worked with a lot of artists, and your time is. Clock's ticking, people. Meet those deadlines. I'm just kidding, artists mostly.
The bottom line is we got some great stuff to offer the patients.
Yeah.
So we just want them to come in and see us.
It's incredible technology, it sounds like. I'm sorry.
No, I know Linda and I are obviously very excited to be here. We're like jumping all over these mics. I got 50 things I'm going to say.
I got everybody separated out. It'll be perfect.
But no, I think the other thing that's really important too, we're lucky in Hamilton where a lot of people use the same imaging center where we have access to these images that may span back 5, even 10 years ago.
Sure.
And so not only are we doing 3D images, but we're also trending those images against time. Sure. Because sometimes it's not just what your breast is doing in this moment, especially for our younger women who are premenopausal, but how it's changing over time, where something suddenly becomes more or even less interesting when you're like, no, but I can see you had one 2 years ago and this actually is stable.
Yeah, and I always tell people, we also have the ability to import, because everything today is digital.
Right.
We also have the ability to import images, like if you've been somewhere else, we come in, the first thing we ask is, have you had something somewhere else? Because it really does help us.
Yeah.
It's like, comparing apples to apples instead of just saying, there's a couple little things here and there, but were they there before or were they new?
Right.
And I look for anything new.
And so that's why it does help if you're going every year so that we can trend things, because some people will say, well, I finally got my first mammogram. They brought me back for an ultrasound. Well, that's true. But as you're doing them and we get comfortable with what your breast architecture looks like, it's, it helps as we spread it out over
And
time.
the other thing that I love, and I find that a lot of people don't realize, is that everybody's mammogram is as individual as their fingerprint. There are no two alike.
Yeah.
Everybody,
That makes sense.
they don't
Yeah.
kind of entirely get that, but how that tissue sits inside of you is very unique to you.
Interesting.
And,
so then being able to track over time has got to be hugely
Exactly.
important as far as just to be like you said, is this growing? Is it shrinking? Is this something I should have cause for concern?
Yeah.
And then they change all through our lives. You're young and, you're having kids and you're breastfeeding and doing all of that. And then you're going through premenopause, menopause, then you age and things kind of regress. So, breast tissue is constantly evolving. So that's what Dr. Lichter said. To see that evolution and to follow it is kind of important because the pattern, the underlying pattern really doesn't change. But
That's
the
how we
tissue
caught
itself
this
does.
one last week. She was, we had it was like a 62, we had a 68 and a 72. And all of them been getting their mammograms regularly.
Years old.
I definitely attribute that to just close surveillance. And now they're all going to basically be cured with surgical resection.
That bump in the road.
Yeah. And
It's turbulence versus
it's
the plane
30
crash,
It's 30 minutes under surgery.
Yeah.
We're quick in, we remove the tissue. You go on hormone therapy for 5 years, blocking your estrogen, and then you're done.
Yeah.
There's no chemo, there's no, potentially even no radiation, depending on what
On the
stage we're
size and
catching
what you're talking
things
about.
and the age of the patient.
Are there certain sizes is there like and that's maybe a weird way to ask it, is there like a blanket size range where you're like, okay, this is something we have to, because we've been mentioning things at like a few millimeters, which are obviously, if caught, it sounds like pretty,
It's pretty much a bump in the road.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
He takes it out. And
is there
But
like
once what I mean?
there
are certain tumors that when you clear a certain size, we'd actually recommend that you start with chemo first to shrink them.
Yeah.
Particularly in those patients who we actually take every tumor once we identify it and we break down its hormone and its protein status, and we'll see, does it respond to estrogen? Does it respond to
see, I talk to
progesterone?
people about that too, because what they don't understand either, and this is something that's kind of a basic thing to understand, is that everybody's breast cancer is also unique.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, your breast cancer is not the same as mine, is not the same as, somebody else's. Yeah. So they type it and they grade it, and some of them are more aggressive than others, and some of them are sensitive to estrogen, some of them are not.
Yeah.
Some of them are sensitive to other things. There's all these different measurements, and that's done on every single tumor, so that when they come to talk to you about what you have as an individual, then they have a plan, for you. And it's a proven method, and it works well, and it's a very individualized care, to try to take care of that person.
Sure.
I think we see that kind of all over the country now, where women will start this journey with a palpable tumor or a mammogram, which then yields a tissue diagnosis from the biopsy done by our radiology colleagues. Then we will look at that tissue. We'll even do genetic testing sometimes on that tissue or the patient themselves, and then come up with a crafted plan where oncology, radiation, and surgery,
we all
everyone
get
gets together in a room, and we all agree that this is the best course for your specific cancer at your stage with your specific genetic profile even.
Yeah.
So, and that's kind of the magic of a breast program, and not
amazing.
just someone who's
And we have access to
surgery.
that. That's the thing that's so wonderful, is we have access to that right here.
Yeah, crazy.
And I love working with Drew.
it's a team.
It's a team.
It's a really
it
great
really
team.
is a team.
I think I said this the last time you all were on the show, but I'll say it now that you're here, Dr. Rauman. No, but there was like look, I spent a lot of my life in hospitals, and so it was nice to be around a bunch of people where there was like a palpable camaraderie at the very least, right? You know what I mean? And I'm sure that I tell everybody, I'm like, I get the best version of everybody, because they're just like, stay strong in front of Mark, because if he's recording, you know what I mean? Don't show the,
Cameras
it
are
really,
rolling.
It was really nice to see. There was like a group of people that were like, everybody had like this same focus on the individual care. And it was really impressive to me. It was something that I hadn't seen in almost my entire life, going to different hospitals all over the country, and so it's really great. And so one of the reasons I was excited to have you back too is that it's like, you guys are like 10 minutes away from the store. I mean, I'm maybe exaggerating a little bit, but you're very close by. I mean, you are that neighborhood place. So it was look, my pleasure to not only get this kind of information out there, but also to let everybody know that, like, yeah, it's right down the road. Like, come get some weird snacks from International and then go down there and get tested.
That's right.
I mean, that's sort of my plan. In
fact, we're going to just leave our cards. We're going to hide them behind the cereal. And as you're over in the different aisles, it'll be like, oh, look at this.
Oh, I found the Kettering Health Punch card on my 7th visit. I still have to pay.
I still have to pay.
One free hernia exam, one free mammogram.
Hey, that's the score, right?
Kevin, that's right. I think we need to do that.
Yeah, right, exactly. I can hear it. I can hear him panicking now. It's like I'm getting an email.
He's scared now.
Yeah.
He's like, Drew, what did you just do to me?
No, I think, we've said it over and over again. The real benefit to staying besides staying close to home is that all of our group, I mean, I just caught Linda, we were having lunch together the other day where we're both in the doctor's lounge. It's like, what do you us giving her a hard time, and I'm there with like usual.
He always
and then
does.
Sendal Nathan was there. We've got our radiation oncologist was there, Dr. Kreinbach, Paul.
Yeah.
It's like
Paul's wonderful.
We're constantly
awesome.
running into each other because it's such a small space, and it's like, oh, hey, while you're here, can you just let's look at these films together. Let's talk about this patient. Hey, were you going to do this therapy?
But what I really like is, again, I'm a little bit older and I've been in practice for 30 plus years. And so, I've kind of watched the evolution of care. And, years ago, I remember the days where women didn't have the option of all of this wonderful imaging and of percutaneous biopsies ahead of surgery and the ability to plan. I remember the days where they felt a lump and they went into surgery. And I remember, because I was a surgeon before I was a radiologist, coming out and they'd be in recovery, and the first thing that they would do would look down. They'd be like, is it still there or not? Because, they didn't have this incredible ability to figure things out ahead of time. So now we do a lot of the imaging, and we'll do image guided biopsies. If we see little calcifications on a mammogram, we can put them in a machine take little mini mammogram pictures and put the needle right in there and take them out and run tests on them. I can do ultrasound guided little biopsies of literally 4 millimeter lesions. That's and amazing. get a diagnosis. And then when he knows what he's dealing with, he can plan. And that's what we were saying. And so, and then also to have such a dedicated group of incredible people. They're dedicated to their patients. And I mean, I love working with him. And having also a longer career, I'm impressed with the dedication and the level of care. I mean, the surgical techniques, the outcomes, the patients do great. It's working in other places, even in Cincinnati. I think that what we have here is as good as anywhere. And that's saying a lot. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So it's a big compliment. And
we appreciate it. And it's not just, and it isn't just me. And I think that's really
team.
what makes this, we have a strong team. Mm-hmm. And, whether it's me doing the surgery or Dr. Grody, I mean, our surgical approach, very similar. We've got radiologists. There's several different radiologists, but they're all on the same page. The radiation team is tight. The oncology team is super tight. Dr. Neetu Radhakrishnan and Arun Sendal Nathan, they're super tight. It's just
and Paul and radiation. Yeah. He's young too, but he's awesome, and he's exceptional.
Dr. Berard, she's excellent as well.
Oh, she's wonderful.
So no, I'm very pleased with the talent that Kettering has worked to acquire, and the team we've built, and we've been able to help a lot of people.
The other thing too is what I kind of like is that if he has a question or if he, says, something's not sitting right or whatever, he just calls me up. Hey, Linda, I need to talk to you about this person. Hey, Linda, will you look at this? So he just calls me up and we go over it again, or I'll give him a different opinion, or we'll say, he might be giving me information that I didn't have on the intake. So that helps me. Okay, yeah, it could be that. Yeah, it could be this. We work through things. We really do try.
That's really cool.
It is cool.
It's amazing.
It's really cool. It's one of the most fun parts of my job.
I agree. The teamwork just can't be stressed enough.
Yeah.
I'm thinking for the patient specifically, when we're looking at October, Linda, what do you think that people really need to know about mammograms, ages to start? Do you have any strong feelings about how often they're supposed to be getting mammograms? I know I do, but I think that's probably the most common question.
A really common question. So, the American Cancer Society and actually the ACR as well, we sort of go along with that, mammogram, some baseline between like 35 and 40.
Yeah.
I like to see somebody just get a mammogram. And if it's normal and you're not at high risk, you don't have anything else, you don't have to come back every year. You can kind of, get that in that 35, 36, 37 range, and then come back when you're 40. We do like seeing them every year.
Sure.
After you turn 40. And that's just for the normal population.
I think the American Society of Breast Surgeons would agree. Age 40, yearly mammograms has been shown to catch cancers when they're earlier and smaller.
Right.
When we talk about the success rate or the survival rate of cancers, because we're catching them earlier, like what he's talking about, that is what's made the impact.
Right.
The numbers have shifted. It takes many years for things to kind of take that shift because you have to follow people for 5 and see if they're still around 5 years, 10 years, and why. Mm-hmm. And so we have shown that it is an effective way to make sure that we're catching those things a little bit earlier.
I'm still stuck at you saying it was 90+% survival rate. That's
it's like 95, 96.
Yeah, stage 1 should have an anticipated 97% survival rate in 5 years, depending on the actual biochemical profile.
Well, and when you think about, especially if you're looking at like 1 in 8 people are getting this, and then
at some time in their lifetime.
Right. Yeah. And almost all of them have the potential to.
So that's kind of the baseline thing for just the normal population.
Sure.
I think if you, we talk about the high risk patients. Yeah. If you have, a mom or a sister, mostly those first degree relatives are really key. If you have a mom or a sister, I like to pay attention to the age. Premenopausal versus postmenopausal. Okay, so we all are at risk as we age.
Right.
And after menopause, as women age, you're going to get those breast cancer hits. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's just going to occur. If you have a mom or a sister that had premenopausal cancer and you had them in their 30s or 40s, I like to get a lead time of almost 10 years on that person. Sure. So if your mom had breast cancer at 40, I'd like to see you seeing your doctor, getting maybe an MRI or a baseline mammogram at like 30. Okay. So, and again, we can run a risk profile on you and see if it really is, our high risk. But I think that, the people that have differences in, their histories or whatever, or a complicated history, or if you ever had a biopsy that has atypical cells, not necessarily cancer, but like what they call atypical cells.
Right.
We tend to watch them a little more carefully.
That makes sense.
So you're not exactly the normal population at that point.
I think people come to me all the time and they're like, I had a cousin maybe on my dad's side, 4 removed, am I at risk? The best thing you can do is go to your family doc and say, look, I've got this family history. I believe I'm of an appropriate age for a mammogram, or if you're not of an appropriate age for mammogram, say, can you run a Gale model or a Tyrer-Cuzick's model, where we'll actually put in your estrogen exposure, your body like your height and weight to get BMI,
right,
when you started your periods, those sorts of things, and it actually calculates whether you're above the 20% risk. 20% lifetime risk of breast cancer, and that's how you'd be identified as high risk. And so a lot of times, I'll have people that stop me and say, am I at risk? And I say, well, let's do the equation.
There's more factors that come into the risk, and that's the risk model that we run. When I told you that everybody that comes in to get a mammogram gets that run on them. If they want it, we ask. It's an option.
Would you like us to see
if you would like us to see that? And so we do it on the majority of people. The other thing that people don't, I say this all the time too, is that 75% of the breast cancers that we diagnose every year have no family history. Yeah. And that always kind of impacts people because I can't tell you the number of people that come in and say, well, I don't have a family history. Doesn't necessarily mean anything.
You're part of the family too.
You know what I'm saying?
I mean, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Are you a woman?
Right.
Yes. So
there you go.
It's there you go. It's just kind of
so I think
those things.
Recognizing that if you're a woman out there age over 40 who hasn't had a mammogram, definitely something to think about this October. Sure. And if you're someone with a family history, definitely should be talking with your family doctor about potentially running one of these risk calculators to see. And if you can't get them to run it when you go in for your mammogram, most mammography centers, I think, will offer to check and see if you're high risk.
Yeah, it's not just us. It's a kind of a standard thing now that a lot of us are doing.
Makes sense, though. Well, funny enough, you answered in very perfect English the one of the questions I got from the audience. So, Kathan, thank you for that question. They did ask something about this. Is there any risk of screening? Or I would assume there's no risk in the actual screening process, right? I mean, is that
No, because it's a soft tissue mammogram. Mammograms do have some radiation involved with them. They're an X-ray.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. They are so highly regulated. Like I have to have, it's the most highly regulated part of everything we do in radiology, pretty much. It's been regulated since the 1990s.
Okay.
And there's an MQSA, it's called the Mammography Quality Standards Act. It's federally regulated. We send in everything to the national regulatory commissions, and they just have to, the ACR does it all. But that's the American College of Radiology. But the bottom line is that getting a mammogram, you probably get more radiation exposure being outside for a few hours in the sun in the afternoon in the summer.
Right. No, but
it's
and it's all shielded too. It's truly just through the breast tissue itself.
The other thing is it's a soft
tissue.
tissue. It's a soft tissue, so it doesn't have to penetrate bone or go through a great big thick body part. You do up a radiation dose to get a chest X-ray or something like that. Any of those X-rays, to be truthful with you, have more radiation involved with them than a mammogram does.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
It's a great question.
That is.
That's a great question.
I was very happy with these.
So in other words, do not be afraid of that.
Good. And I think that's the biggest thing. Something, not to jump back before I jump into some more of these questions, but something you all said about just the way it's set up. This is a conversation I'm constantly having about like social anxieties for people, right?
Right.
And so even something as simple as like, I would like to continue living if I'm at risk, right? Like healthcare things. I know people who are too afraid to call a business to find if they're open still. So I imagine something like this, a much more serious thing. There's probably a lot of anxiety that goes into it.
True.
So it's kind of beautiful to me the way that you described the center too, where it's like, oh, well, you're not having to walk through the whole hospital. We have this like dedicated area for that too. So that was something I kind of just wanted to reiterate to be like, please go. Yeah. Too many of us have lost too many of you. And I mean, it's serious. I don't get too serious on here often, but I'm like, it's like you have the option to take care of it. Like, please do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Something that I think might tie into our last question. This is another one that came in from the audience. Are breast MRIs being recommended more for screenings for dense tissue over a traditional mammogram, or is that more of like an in addition to?
It's in addition to.
Cool.
First of all, you need a mammogram to even know what your tissue looks like. Okay. You know what I'm saying? So that's also a program, by the way, an AI program that kind of evaluates the amount of glandular tissue in volume to the breast itself. So they're classified as fatty, scattered density, dense, meaning that you got a lot of fibroglandular tissue, and then there's like extremely dense, meaning that you almost can't see through it.
Yeah.
Obviously, a fatty breast, for people that haven't ever seen a mammogram, it's pretty easy to see through. The glandular tissue and the glandular densities show up as like kind of whitish areas on a black white X-ray.
Yeah.
And but cancers show up that same way too because they're solid, they're tissuey stuff.
Yeah.
So in a fatty background, you see them real easy, but when it's buried in the middle of a lot of glandular stuff, they can be hidden. So yes, MRIs are. They're awesome in addition to a mammogram. What we tend to do is we tend to kind of put them in the mix of the screening of those patients. I would never say to do an MRI and not do a mammogram because mammograms pick up a few subtle things, and you have to have things like about 3 millimeters and some of the really subtle little microcalcifications and some of the low grade, what I call low grade tumors that aren't as active are kind of hard to pick up on a mammogram.
Interesting.
And so mammograms are, and I said pick up on an MRI. I should have said it. I'm sorry, I worded that wrong. MRIs, they're done in a way where they give you some dye. Okay, they give you like a contrast, and a cancer or something that's kind of bad is very avidly picks that up. And so that's one of the things we look at is those bright spots that enhance on an MRI. And those are suspicious, and we would probably tend to try to look into that further and maybe even biopsy some of those.
Sure.
But there are a lot of little things that kind of show up, just fibrocystic changes and just active breast tissue. And so there's a lot of little things. MRIs are very specific.
Okay.
They're not always, or they're very sensitive, but they're not always specific. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
They're very sensitive tests.
Yeah.
But they're not always specific. Like they don't
like,
always tell you exactly what it is.
Yeah, it's like it seems like using them in tandem. In my head, I'm just picturing the old Venn diagram, right, where they have these two and then there's a little bit of crossover, but there's obviously a point to both of them.
Exactly,
right?
They're both useful. So when she asked the question, or whoever asked that question, I think that I would use a breast MRI in that setting, like in addition to, or in a kind of a do this one time, maybe that the next time, do this one time, and that
and
the next time.
And it particularly makes sense.
And
when
it makes
you're
sense because
someone who's high risk,
especially.
Yeah,
that's really when insurance really, frankly, wants to pay for it.
Right.
So there are definitely those cases where there's some abnormality on mammogram, very dense tissue. This woman may be feeling a mass, and even though they're not high risk, it makes sense to get an MRI. But then the other category would be someone who has historically dense breasts, but is also with an extensive family history.
Right.
And that's a patient
And
who,
we start to worry, are we missing some? Are we not
we'll
seeing it? So.
we actually like to alter every 6 months. We'll do the mammogram, then 6 months later do an MRI. That's part of a high risk protocol because, as Linda mentioned, the MRI actually is great at seeing some things like lobular, whereas a mammogram can see things like DCIS or microcalcifications. And so both tests have a lot of inherent quality.
So if you think about it, you alternate them like every 6 months. So you're doing each one individually. Like every year.
Okay.
So if you do a mammogram here and then you do an MRI and then you do a mammogram 6 months after that, you're doing that every year. So you're kind of with the MRIs every year, but kind of space them out.
The idea is that you're
pretty well covered. It's been a good
That's
program.
been our protocol. Linda and I have worked on that together for.
That's a pretty accepted protocol.
Kind of how we've run it.
Yeah.
Cool. I love it. I know we kind of covered this a little bit about like correlations of cancer between the family members, for example. And then also, well, actually, we really, now that I'm reading this out loud, see, this is one of the, you can tell this is another good episode. I mentioned this recently. If I have notes, you know that I came to play. But no, and they asked about, I'm making sure I'm reading everybody's questions mostly out of kindness now. We talked about correlations between family members. Is it always the same type of cancer or generally different? I think we know the answer to that. It's like everybody's, we're all unique snowflakes.
But I would say that, there is a genetic, we've identified breast cancer genes. So if, we do have.
I think triple negatives do tend to kind of, when you see people that are BRCA, or there's actually 28 different genes that we're testing for now, there are certain genetic predispositions that you will see similar breast cancers between generations.
Okay.
But it doesn't necessarily have to be the same type. You
It
could get
still,
a lobular and then get a ductal.
Right.
So it can be, they can be different, but I would say too, depending on the type, then we talk about that where we recommend, or we at least talk to them about, getting tested to seeing if that's something that's, it places their subsequent family members.
And the criteria for genetic testing is actually very stringent. Again, insurance companies dictate a lot of this.
Of course.
And most of it depends on the number of first-degree relatives and the types of cancer and the ages of those cancers, actually. And so that's, again, something that once you get screened for high risk, that's something we would additionally talk about is, do you also meet criteria for genetic testing?
Beautiful. I love that. So we talked about that, nailed that. Look, it's like you guys read the questions beforehand. This is the last one I have. And I've heard this from a few people, but I copy and pasted my favorite version of the question, which I know I'm editing on the fly here. But this is just about, you always want, I'm always torn between two worlds, right? I obviously want to be professional and respectful of everyone, but I'm also funny and deal with my trauma through comedy.
Yes.
So there is that part of me. But of
Understood.
course, no, this question was really just pertaining to differentiating. Thank you so much. I was like, can I put a shun on the end of it? No, but between, what we would decide as a lump versus something like a swollen lymph node, right? I know, Dr. Ryman, you talked about that a little bit before we started recording, but are there any maybe warning signs or tells that somebody should look at? Lymph nodes seem to get annoyed by every part of existence, though,
lymph nodes are everywhere in your body. They're everywhere. I mean, they just take care of everything. I tell people they're like the train stations along the train tracks. We have lymphatics that take all that fluid out of our tissues, and lymph nodes are the train stations along all those train tracks. Yeah. And but they're very reactive. You get a bug bite on your arm, you get a flu, you get a sore throat. Your lymph nodes will swell. So we tend to say, keep an eye on it.
Right.
And watch it. If it doesn't go down, if it's, hard and firm, or if it gets bigger, and there's nothing like that, you need to go see your doctor.
Of course.
You need to go see your doctor and get examined.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I mean, a lymph node, really, its whole job is to process foreign material.
Right.
And so if you get a cut, scratch, virus, your cat scratches you.
Very reactive.
There's a bunch of different things that can make your lymph nodes swollen.
Yeah.
Persistently enlarged lymph nodes, or particularly irregularly shaped lymph nodes that are fixated in the tissue, So something that isn't moving. You're like, this is a rock. It's weirdly shaped and it's not going
and
anywhere.
it's getting bigger.
Yeah, right.
Or it's just not going away. And I'm not
common
sick
sense
or,
rules the day. You know, and I think those we would start with an ultrasound. Most patients will come to me and say, I had this swollen lymph node. It's been there for 23 minutes. We would all say, keep an eye on it.
Yeah.
But I think it's that lymph node when someone comes and says, look, you know, I watched it for 23 minutes and an additional 23 days.
Right.
And it's persistent. And in fact, it's growing and it's tender.
Yeah.
You know, whenever I have a lymph node, I say, look at the extremity, look at the surrounding area. So if it's on your foot, you don't need to do a breast exam.
Right.
You know,
but you look at,
you look at the surrounding area to see could something have triggered this lymph node, and then if it's still there and persistent or growing, then absolutely tell your physician.
We saw a lot of swollen lymph nodes with COVID shots.
I'm sure.
Yeah,
a lot of them. Like a lot of them, we were seeing them on the mammograms. We kind of mentioned them, and we were actually through the COVID time actually asking people, "Did you get your shot in your right arm or your left?"
Yeah.
Because we would see swollen lymph nodes. That's how reactive they are. Sure. And you know, we would put it in a report and just kind of comment on it and keep an eye on it and kind of know it was there. But you know, a lot of time it's just
it's not something that I would say go around and feel up all your friends and neighbors to see if they have a lymph node.
Right.
No.
But obviously the number one way that people find them when they come to me is in the shower. As you're bathing yourself in the shower, when you're feeling different parts of your body, people suddenly feel a lump. Trend it over time. Tell your primary care doctor. There will be warning signs that they look for, and usually the first step, don't be alarmed, is to get an ultrasound and sometimes even a biopsy if it's persistent.
You know, the one thing I keep thinking about throughout this whole thing, and I know we've kind of touched on some of the anxieties around it, but you know, I'm just thinking about people I've known in my own life. I'm just like, I know it sounds scary. I'll look right into the camera just for this one. I know it might sound scary right now, but that little bit of fear you have today, are you more scared of that, or are you more scared of that being the last experience of your life? Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not trying to be overly dramatic about it.
It's true.
But like, I don't know. Again, and look, maybe I'm
you
lucky.
know, I see a couple of women every year, and it's kind of sad because they come in and they've got something significant, and you know that they've known for a long time, and they're just afraid.
Sure.
Or they've hidden it.
Sure.
You think, how can you possibly have hidden this from, you know, your husband, your significant other, your whatever, your family, and they've hidden it, and they're that afraid. Yeah. Some women actually also, they are such caregivers that they take care of everybody else but themselves.
So
sure, absolutely.
I have met through the course of my career phenomenal women. I'm just blown away by the strength and resilience of most women. And they really are. They take care of their families. They take care of their kids, their husbands, their moms, their everything. And then they kind of put themselves late.
Right.
Yeah.
They come in apologizing because my husband had a heart attack, or he had this, or he had that, and I'm late for my mammogram. And then they wind up with something, and then they're like feeling bad about it or blaming themselves. And I'm just like, stop. Yeah. It's today forward.
Right.
It's today forward. Just take that step. And I also encourage people. I got a couple of ladies from Dayton, and I got a couple little ladies from Cincinnati, and they come in together.
Yeah, I love it.
Because they get over their fear a little bit. It's like, hey, it's the yearly time. And they literally, every year, I get my text will say, hey, you know, your Dayton ladies are coming in today. Yeah. And there's 3 of them. They come in together, and they go to lunch, and they come in to get their mammograms, and they all hang out, and I know they're there, and I literally will walk out, and they've become like a yearly thing. And we give each other hugs, and I let them know that their mammograms are okay, and they all get really happy, and then they go to lunch together. So it's like you just have to kind of face that fear.
Right.
And do whatever you have to do. I have another.
Sounds like kind of a fun way to face
it too. You know? And I have a couple of ladies that bring their daughters.
Sure.
They come in with their daughters, and so sometimes if it's hard to do alone, you come in with somebody that you love.
Yeah.
Or, you know, they come in with their husbands. Their husbands wait in the car outside or in the waiting room if they don't, you know, they come in with them and they just wait. You know, they just bring them in, make sure that they do it together. That's good. So that's not a bad thing either.
I've also had a couple ladies lately, some of the older ladies, and it's interesting as you get postmenopausal, some of these cancers are actually very slow growing. And they'll get a lump in their breast and they'll know it. They'll sit there for a year or 2 years or even 3 years until it becomes enormous, and they'll flat out tell me, they'll say, I knew it was cancer, I just thought I'd be dead already. And they're at that stage of their life where you get cancer, you think, well, I'm going to die. So why would I put myself through chemo, radiation, surgery?
Yeah.
And this just, again, drives home that not all breast cancers are equal. In fact, a lot of the postmenopausal breast cancers are much slower growing.
Yeah.
And if you do get one, please just let us take care of it. And before it becomes quite large or invading,
Right.
you know, because sometimes they don't spread. You know, someone says, well, Drew, how big do they have to be to spread? I've taken out a 15 centimeter breast mass that had not spread to lymph nodes. I was mind boggling.
Yeah, it's like this big.
Right.
It was like this
but again,
big.
it depends on the type.
Type of
Depends on
cancer.
how aggressive it is.
And so,
it depends on all these
we
things.
just say,
So-
you know, come in and let's. It's always in my mind. I don't know. In most medical things, in my experience, it's better to just have the knowledge. No one is going to force you to have chemo at our program, or frankly anywhere in the United States.
Yeah.
No one's going to force you into radiation. No one's going to force you into surgery. And so, at least come in and let us tell you. Sometimes some people just say, well, how long have I got, doc? Which we're really bad at guessing.
Right.
But, you know,
not our-
I
it's not
think
us.
I think that
It's a
at
higher
least
power
come
deals with that
in
one.
so we can tell you what you have,
Yeah.
where it's spread. And honestly, I swear, I would never tell you. You could come in and say, thank you for the information. Appreciate your time. Love your tie. Have a great
Right.
life.
Yeah.
And we are totally open to that at this point in medical healthcare in the United States.
That's good. Yeah, I mean, what's wrong with getting informed?
Yeah.
Right?
And so I have had people come in, they get the diagnosis and they tell me, well, I want to do this part of your treatment plan and a little bit of this part of your treatment plan, and I don't want any of that part of your treatment plan. And
yeah.
we work through it.
Yeah, and you're not here to agree. It's like you're not here to disagree, rather, with the patient.
No, there is
That's
no
right
black and
answer.
white or right and wrong, because you know, some people that are older, you know, if things continue to grow, sometimes it just gets nasty. You know, it just gets
Or it'll bleed.
deforming, or they'll bleed, or whatever. It just gets hard to deal with.
Sure.
So it's like I can't tell you the number of patients that, you know, they see Dr. Lichter here and he takes it off and they just, you know, don't do anything else.
Right.
That's just because, you know what, I'm older. Let's just do what we can do, get rid of it, so it doesn't cause me any big obvious problem. And the rest of it, I don't want chemo. I don't want this. I don't want that.
Yeah.
I'll
And
just
we're going to
take
work
my
through
risk.
that.
And,
Genuinely. We are not here
It's
to
okay.
promote any sort of party lines or anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's just genuine. We really just want women to have access to care. And so I think those are really the three types. The women who come in for the screening mammogram, they find the tumor and they want everything done. There's the women who come in with a palpable mass and we biopsy it and we work it up. And then there are the women who already kind of know they have cancer and it's enormous and it's now bleeding or it's infected. Still come in. I mean, we can even just remove that breast and we won't bug you. Just let us help you. Let us help you.
I love it. You know, as we get what I'm assuming is probably near the end here, I thought I would bring this up because I have a friend who is a breast cancer survivor as well, but he's a guy.
Yeah.
Thank you for reminding me, Steve.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it. And
got several men. that
and I
we
was going to
follow.
say, I mean, I know
Couple every
obviously
year.
it dramatically affects women more than men, if I'm not mistaken in saying it that way. But so what's
Well, and we see a couple of breast cancers in men every year.
really
Every
Just
year.
we do. It's about I think they say 1 in 830 or 840 men.
I actually don't know that statistic.
It's a
but
statistic
it's-
around
it's out
1 in
there,
every like 800 men or something. It's about 1 in 1,000. Every 1,000 breast cancers that we see, there's a man.
interesting?
So
I
it's
was always
not-
sort of curious because again, you know, I mean, obviously most I've ever read.
So it's
or
not.
researched-
It's not. It's a more rare thing. Some of the things that I think place men at risk are obesity,
Okay.
cirrhosis, the liver, alcohol. With that liver disease, it can change some of the hormonal influences. You know, there is some breast tissue in men. I mean, obviously, men can also have the genetic, you know.
there are specific genes that,
There are
especially
genes
BRCA2, that the men are at increased risk for breast cancer.
Interesting.
So men do have a risk, and again, it's the same thing. You feel a lump, you know, get it checked out by your doctor.
Yeah.
You'll probably come into the women's center. We do try to respect the men and the women's areas, and you know, kind of keep things respectful, because it's a little bit like I got to come into a women's center to get you know, taken care of. So that again,
Some people get caught up on
face
the
your
wrong.
fears.
Yeah, I was
and,
gonna say,
you
you
know,
get caught up on the wrong details.
Yes.
Of like, do you want to live? Who cares what it says on the sign? Like, why am I telling adults
face
this?
your fears.
You know?
Just come on in. It's okay. You know, we don't talk about you after you leave. It's just, you know, just come on in. We just want to take care of you.
You will get a mammogram. We can't. It's commonly held that there's you can actually do a mammogram on a man too, or a lot of times we do an ultrasound. I think.
Sure.
We actually do both on benign breast disease in men too. Men actually get something called gynecomastia, and that is not. We do see quite a bit of that. That's not infrequent. They come in because a lot of medications, antihypertensive meds, really common medications can cause growth of breast tissue because it changes like hormonal influences and stuff. So it's nothing to be embarrassed about. It's just something to get checked out. And that is a much more common thing that we do see a fair amount of. Breast cancer itself is pretty rare, but obviously,
in fact, that's probably the number one consult that I get is, a male will have some sort of excess breast tissue from gynecomastia, and they're sending it to me. Can you just rule it out for breast cancer? And we look at it.
Smart. I love it.
Yep. So definitely something to be aware of.
It just sounds like the name of the game here is like, I mean, realistically, like any other ailment, like get ahead of it as far as you can, right? It's like anytime you're concerned, like you said, I mean, obviously there's some little, maybe wait more than the first 23 minutes.
Correct.
But after that, it's like pay attention.
By the way, I'm that 23 minute
It's really
guy.
about self.
I was definitely that guy. I'm like,
it's really about self-awareness.
Yeah.
It's about self-awareness.
Yeah.
It's about
don't get on WebMD. There's only ever two options. You either have a headache or you're dying in the 23 minutes. Right. Yeah. That's why I just turn off my phone if I ever have a problem. I'm just like, this isn't going to work.
God, I can't tell you how many times I tell people, God, do not listen to everything that's out there because, please.
Almost don't listen to anything that's out there.
Talk to your doctors.
Yes.
They come in, they're scared, so scared of a biopsy or of a mammogram or whatever. I'm so scared. I'm so this, and they have gone so far down a path. Yeah. And I'm like, wow.
Don't worry until you have something to worry about.
Exactly.
And then they go through the procedure and they look at you like, why in the heck did I spend all that time worrying?
Right.
Because this was nothing.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
And
I mean,
I'd wager
it might be something, but it's not. It's not anything.
I feel like the human brain tends to go 0 to 100, and the reality is somewhere in the first few miles, probably.
There is always there. You can always find that case of that awful thing that happened. You can always find that, but that is not the norm. Right. So you can't be afraid of just coming in and getting checked out.
Before we close up, there are two things that I really, really have to get out there.
Yeah.
Number one is the notion that breast cancer causes breast pain. So the other one that we very commonly see is I didn't get my mammogram this year because I have breast pain and I knew it was going to be cancer. In fact, most breast cancers are not painful, which is why we don't get which is why we get mammograms, because women will come and say, I can't have breast cancer because I have no pain. The pain receptors typically live in the skin and in the muscle. There's not as many in the actual glandular tissue of the breast. And so do not use pain as a foreboding sign of cancer or of this security blanket that I can't have cancer because I don't have pain. So that's my one comment about pain.
That's a great note. Yeah,
absolutely perfect.
Then I think
100% agree with him on that.
The last and final thing I would say is for our women who are getting mammograms or aren't getting mammograms, regardless, every woman should be aware of their breast architecture. So about every month, we don't really call it breast self-exams anymore. We call it breast awareness, where a woman just in the shower once a month should be aware of what her breasts feel like in the way that they're oriented. Yeah. And so if that changes, then you can track and trend. I mean, that's the biggest name of the game in breast. And
and I'm going to add a little bit to that.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would ask that young women, take a look and do that exam like right after their menstrual cycle.
Okay.
Because you kind of are ramping up hormones until that time, and then when you have your menstrual cycle, it's like the downswing of the hormones, so your breasts tend to be less sore, less stimulated, and that's probably the best time to check yourself. I would also say don't do it every day. Yeah. Women tend to overdo it. It's like they just, they do it too much.
Once they find something, they'll check it 6 times.
And I'm like, think about how your kids grow. Right. Okay. Your kids grow. You see them every day. You have no perception. But grandma, who hasn't seen them for a month, goes, "Oh my God, you just grew an inch." So what you want to do is you want to put time in between, because if you feel something, pay attention to it. But if you feel it every day, I can't tell you how many times they've come in and they're like, "Well, it hasn't changed." Well, it has, but you haven't perceived change. Right. You want to be able to perceive change. So if you feel it this big and you're thinking, it's a little nothing, but then next month it's like this, you need to get in and get it seen.
Yeah.
So the other thing is take a look at yourself in the mirror.
Yeah.
A lot of times people just don't stand in front of the mirror and stand up straight and look at themselves. You can see changes and differences between one side and another, or in your nipples or whatever.
Sure.
I mean, just take a look in the mirror. That can be done privately and kind of get used to how you look. A lot of times they're not the same.
It's actually a good time to look for your skin cancers too, if I can get that plug out there. So in fact,
wrong month, Dr.
I'm so sorry. I'm getting all mixed up now.
But it's true. It's that self-awareness
with your
thing.
breast checks,
It's that
we
self-awareness
say
thing.
you're in the shower, and as you get out, you're supposed to actually do the exam in the Superwoman pose, sitting there in front of the mirror looking, and then I just say, but turn around and look at your back too to check for melanoma.
Yeah, smart.
So get them all at
There you
once.
go.
Yeah,
all at
love it.
once.
We covered the whole thing. No, I'm just kidding.
You now are safe from breast cancer.
Right, exactly. I had so many notes, and I think you all covered so many of them. And then also, of course, some of these, I think I may have dove a little too deep. It was like, we could do a whole series of episodes on
Yeah,
these.
we can.
But maybe that's... But hey, listen, if you all love this that much, let me pressure them into coming back on the show.
The whole Ask the Expert, I think, is the coolest podcast notion that is for medical.
Yeah.
I would love to have a podcast of Ask the Expert where you bring in different medical docs, and it's just the top 10 questions that your viewers put out there, because I think there are so many quick things that I loved these questions.
Yeah.
I thought
Yeah,
they
these were great.
excellent-
These are
excellent
good.
questions.
Well, maybe we'll get more
Hopefully.
before the episode actually airs, since I've been lying to everybody about my production schedule. It's October. But no, all kidding aside, if this goes well, maybe there's a follow-up episode in the future, too,
Yeah.
if you guys are up for
Yeah.
that.
This
Be
is my
honored.
shameless plug to get myself back on the
It
show.
would
Yes,
be
I'm
honored.
in. Listen,
I would be
melanoma.
honored.
Listen, what we need
I
to
don't
do. Well, I'll pitch this off here, but
It's my first time, so I don't know.
You did great.
I'll be honored.
Wasn't it way easier?
Actually, yeah, you
I
guys are great.
pride myself on making my guests comfortable.
No, it's fantastic.
Which
Always
is why
a
I
great
took
time.
all of the whoopee cushions out before we started.
Thank you.
Very lowbrow occasionally. No, all kidding aside, I really appreciate you both taking the time. It was very nice
Absolutely.
to meet you. Well, not that we
you.
didn't meet before, but you know what I mean. Very nice to actually
I
sit
do
down
know
and
what you
spend
mean.
time with
Thank
you, Dr.
you.
Brown. And I appreciate
Yeah.
you taking the time for this.
Absolutely.
And of course, Dr. Linton, thanks for coming back.
Absolutely.
And yeah, absolutely. And just a huge shout out to our team, all the physicians, and especially our nurses as well,
Yeah.
who work in the mammogram centers, who work in the OR,
techs, all my techs.
all of
Wow.
my staff in the clinic who does such a great job of making our women feel comfortable. All the women over at the OB-GYN center, their nurses, their physicians.
My technologists
we
who work their
have-
butts off in that breast center.
I think it's
And
the
MR
one
techs,
thing about when it comes to
ultrasound
breast
techs.
teamwork is just it can't be overemphasized.
No.
It's a team sport.
Yeah. I love that. We all have a clearly great team. So I appreciate you coming out here. And look, everybody, get checked.
Get
Be
your
good to
mammogram.
yourselves. Be as good to yourself as you want someone to be good to you.
somebody
That's the best
that
job.
loves you wants you to be around for a
Yeah.
while.
That's right.
Yeah.
Maybe even someone that doesn't love you, because I like my enemies. Stay out there, stay healthy. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to end on that.
That's awesome. That's great.
I like to end the show on a threat.
That's great.
Thank you all so much. I really appreciate you being here. Always looking forward to our future collaborations. You know the drill. They're great. Don't you love them? It's so cool. And it was one of those things I just really didn't expect. You can watch the old RoboDocs episode to see how I really feel. But I've spent a lot of my life in a hospital. This is really, really, you don't get this kind of attention and activity from a lot of doctors. Not saying that they're not out there, but it's a hard job. And then imagine putting yourself out there socially on top of that. I know a lot of people are not into that. I get it. I'm one of those people. Well, I don't operate on anyone. You get what I'm trying to say. Very cool of them to do this. One last moment. This is your chance. If you got through because you were so enthralled by this interview, don't forget, leave a comment telling me what you learned on this episode. Leave that comment as well as being subscribed to Jungle Gyms International Market on YouTube in order to win this sweet Eckrich Care Package that I have now added some of my own favorite international treats for you to enjoy at home. And you can eat along with me. What more could you ask for? Okay, well, I can't do that, but I will do everything else. So, all right, on that, I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you all so much for tuning into the show. I really appreciate your time. I hope you have a great rest of the week. And in the meantime, I'll see you out there in the aisles. The Jungle Gyms podcast is recorded in the WJJI studio inside Jungle Gyms International Market in Fairfield, Ohio. The Jungle Gyms podcast is produced and hosted by Mark Borison.